What's up everybody, this is Master Ian Gamer. New heroes are by far one of the most anticipated features of Overwatch 2, and while Blizzard has so far given us a decent number of hints and little indications about which heroes might be joining the roster in Overwatch's sequel, I often see people take some of these more nebulous clues and hints and misconstrue them as being definitive evidence of something we may not even actually end up getting in Overwatch 2. So in today's video, I'm going to be addressing some common misconceptions I often see floating around in the Overwatch community, focusing on specific characters that people think are confirmed or indications of the number of new heroes we're going to be getting, which aren't in actuality necessarily true. But real quick first, I just want to mention that this video is a follow-up to a video I did recently, where I touched on the concrete details we actually know regarding new heroes in Overwatch 2 at this point, so I do strongly recommend you check out that video as well, either before or after watching this video. Either works, and I'll have a link to it both down in the description and in the cards on screen. But now let's get into hero misconceptions, starting with what is by far the most common specific hero misconception I see, which is that Mauga is a confirmed new hero for Overwatch 2. Now, to preface this, I'll just say I wish Mauga was actually confirmed. He is such a cool character, and it's so easy to see why he's become this fan-favorite new hero candidate, with many people hyping him up and getting excited for him being a new character in the sequel. But unfortunately, there just isn't concrete evidence supporting that at this point in time. There is, however, some very interesting information we do have about him, specifically that he was going to be a new hero at one point, and was actually a hero being developed a few years ago. Digging into the details, former Overwatch game director Jeff Kaplan mentioned around the time of Sigma's release that Mauga was originally going to be the 31st hero in Overwatch. But according to Jeff Kaplan, apparently while they were working on Mauga as a character, they ultimately decided that the kit and abilities they wanted to add into the game with the 31st Overwatch hero didn't end up fitting the personality and design of Mauga as a character, and thus they had to put him on hold in order to instead bring in Sigma and make him the 31st hero, given that his personality and backstory better fit the design they were trying to go for. Jeff did then follow up this information by saying that Blizzard still has big plans for Mauga, and that they are definitely excited to see him join the roster one day, but unfortunately, that's all the information we really have. And while this might initially sound like concrete information that Mauga will in fact be coming to the game, unfortunately, it isn't, and let me explain why. When it comes to Overwatch hero development, there are a ton of factors that go into it. You need to have an interesting and coherent character that fits within the Overwatch universe. They then need a corresponding kit and abilities, which not only works with that character design and personality, but also fits the scope of what can actually work and be implemented in the Overwatch game. And then on top of that, the character and kit need to be something that fits the current state of Overwatch and isn't redundant by having repeat abilities from other existing heroes, or breaks the game in some way relative to the other heroes and abilities that exist. So looking back at Mauga specifically, while his character and personality may be well established at this point, he doesn't necessarily have a functional gameplay kit and abilities that would actually work in the current iteration of Overwatch. Even considering all the abilities he's indicated as having in the Baptiste short story, it's not as simple as just taking those abilities and shoving them into Overwatch. You have to adequately balance those abilities, you have to make sure they work well together, you have to make sure all the abilities work well with the other abilities that exist in game, and because of all these complex variables that go into creating a finalized playable hero, the simple fact that Blizzard was developing him to be a hero doesn't guarantee that he'll ever end up being a playable hero. Countless heroes go through various phases of development internally at Blizzard, with the vast majority of them never seeing the light of day. Based on statements Blizzard has made in the past, they're constantly toying with different ideas, different mechanics, different concepts, and even if you have something that's great in the character department or the gameplay department, it doesn't mean you'll be able to have enough to work with that particular concept or idea to make it a fully fledged hero that you can add to the roster. And so, as tragic as it might be, Mauga, at this point, for all we know, could end up suffering that exact fate. Of course, Blizzard wants to make him a playable hero. Who wouldn't? He looks like an awesome character. But there's no guarantee that he will ever end up seeing the light of day, say, because there's no guarantee that Blizzard can, or to be honest, even necessarily should, take the time and effort to find and develop a kit that works for him specifically in-game. Now, in terms of concrete detail, I think Mauga is actually a really interesting character to look at, specifically because of how you can contrast him with other characters that are effectively confirmed as being new heroes in the sequel, such as the Junker Queen. Both Mauga and the Junker Queen have been long-time fan-favorite hero candidates, with the devs themselves having even commented on both characters as being something that they think would be cool to add to the playable hero roster. However, as I discussed in depth in my previous video, the reason the Junker Queen specifically is concrete, but Mauga is not, is because of the first-person player model we saw during the BlizzCon line presentation. From what we can tell based on this very brief visual here, this appears to be a finalized, or nearly finalized, version of the Junker Queen's first-person player model. This is an entity which would only exist if Blizzard was very close, if not already finished, with developing the Junker Queen as a hero. Due to the nature of hero development, their in-game model and visual effects are usually some of, if not the last things locked in when it comes to developing a new playable hero. You're only going to end up modeling and texturing a character's in-game model after all those other factors I talked about which go into developing a playable hero are already set in stone. Their character is established in terms of visual design and personality, their kit and abilities are locked in and are at the very least in a late playable stage, if not already finalized at that point, and Blizzard has determined that they are a hero who will work in the current state of the game, and thus have begun work on that final step of animating and modeling them in the game itself. This is why we can say the Junker Queen has concrete evidence as being an Overwatch 2 hero, but Mauga does not. We have no in-game model of what Mauga looks like. For all we know, an in-game model for him doesn't even exist. All we have is that the devs said they were planning to add him as a playable hero at one point in the past, and that they had begun work on developing him as a hero, but we have no evidence of how far they got in that process, or if they got anywhere close to making him a finalized character. And even if they had gotten very far into development with him as a character, the fact that the abilities they came up with for him ultimately didn't feel like they fit the character, and thus were shifted over to Sigma, means they would have had to reset much of the progress they'd already made with developing Mauga as a hero. So in short, the Overwatch devs saying that they want to add Mauga as a hero and that at one point in the past they were working on him being a playable hero doesn't guarantee that he'll ever end up seeing the light of day. There's a big difference between what the devs want to do versus what they can actually end up doing, and simply because of how many other variables go into making a playable hero, we cannot say with any certainty that he is in fact an Overwatch 2 hero. I will say that he's quite likely to become a playable hero at some point, but we simply don't have the concrete detail pointing towards him being a hero in Overwatch 2. And this same sort of mentality can be extended to plenty of other hero candidates. Characters like Maximilian or Sanjay or some of the other Mecha Squad characters all fit in this similar sort of boat. Sure, Blizzard has built them up as characters within the Overwatch universe and even in many instances hinted at potential abilities they could have in-game, but there simply isn't any concrete evidence saying that, yes, this is a hero Blizzard is currently planning to release in the same way as the other characters I mentioned in my previous video. So hopefully at this point I haven't irritated the Mauga fans too much, because believe me, I want Mauga to be added as a playable hero just as much as the rest of you. But just because I want him to be added doesn't mean he will be added, and when you simply don't have the concrete evidence to support that he is a hero currently in development, we can't bank on him being a new hero added in Overwatch 2. The next big misconception, though, I'd like to address is the idea of there being 6 new tank and support heroes ready to release in Overwatch 2. Now, this one is a bit weird because it technically exists in multiple different forms. Some people just say there's 6 new heroes ready for Overwatch 2. Others will say, oh, there's 6 new tank and support heroes planned for Overwatch 2, but not finished. Basically, there's a lot of slightly different variants of the same phrase, 6 new tank tank and support heroes ready for Overwatch 2. And as exciting of an idea as this is, unfortunately, this is not a statement that Blizzard has ever actually made. In fact, the statement itself appears to actually be an amalgamation of a couple different statements made by Blizzard over the years. The first aspect of it, which is that there are multiple new tank and support heroes in development, is an actual quote from the Overwatch devs. This was made by former game director Jeff Kaplan at the time of Echo's release, and was seemingly said as a way to placate players who were upset that Echo ended up being a damage hero as opposed to a support.
We know how much people love new heroes. We are making a bunch of new heroes for Overwatch 2. We have tanks and supports in the works. There is hero development happening.
Now, another key thing to take note of here, though, is when the devs say they have multiple new tank and support heroes in development, that unfortunately is a terribly vague statement, which doesn't really mean anything. We know from countless other discussions had by the Overwatch developers that at any given point, there are always multiple heroes being worked on internally. Some of these might be the very next heroes we end up seeing with the launch of Overwatch 2. Others might be ones we don't end up seeing for many more years down the line, way after Overwatch 2 first launches. Just given how long it takes to fully develop a hero from start to finish, and how much Blizzard iterates and shelves different ideas as they work on them over the years, the statement, multiple new tanks and supports in development, doesn't mean much, because of course they're working on multiple new tank and support heroes, but that statement itself doesn't actually mean this is what we're going to see in the near future. Now, the other actual statement made by the devs, which many people seem to be falsely attributing to the idea of 6 new tank and support heroes, is a statement made by multiple developers once again back at BlizzCon 2018, when following the reveal of Ashe as the newest hero, they stated that at that point, they had 6 new heroes in development. Now, since the time that statement was officially made by the devs, there have actually been 3 new heroes added, being Baptiste, Sigma, and Echo. And following the announcement of Sojourn as being a new hero in Overwatch 2, we can pretty safely assume that she was in fact the 4th of those 6 heroes, which does still leave 2 unnamed heroes left. However, much like the other component that goes into this misconception, simply saying they had 6 new heroes in development isn't really saying much. Especially when you consider that statement was made more than 3 years ago at this point. Presumably, the rest of the heroes from that original 6 are just heroes that are going to end up in Overwatch 2, but even then, it's the same issue of who knows if they're the same 2 or 3 heroes that were originally planned back at that point in time in 2018, as opposed to completely different heroes they might be working on now. Much like the multiple new tank and support heroes statement, this 6 new heroes in development statement was likely only made at the time to help pacify the player base when they were upset about, once again, getting another damage hero instead of a new tank or support. And since then, over the years, people have sort of taken these 2 separate statements and sort of merged them into a singular statement where people now suddenly expect 6 new tank and support heroes actively being planned to release with the launch of Overwatch 2, which, for all we know, could end up being what happens. I would love it if we got 6 new tank and supports on top of the several dozen damage I'm sure we'll be getting, but it is not an actual statement the devs have made, especially not in reference to Overwatch 2 specifically. It is an amalgamation of 2 separate statements made more than a year apart from each other that, for whatever reason, people have just sort of remembered, I guess, and somehow in their minds accidentally merged the 2 together. And given the promising nature of the amalgamation itself, I'm sure that's why so many people have latched onto it on the internet and shared it around to the point that it's become a common misconception. So no, it has never been officially stated that 6 new tank and support heroes will be coming in Overwatch 2. The last major misconception I'd like to touch on though in this video is the idea that there will be 40 plus heroes on the playable roster once Overwatch 2 launches. Now, this misconception actually has a very specific origin, which is a statement made by Overwatch developer Matthew Hawley during an interview back at BlizzCon 2019.
Then by the time Overwatch 2 comes out, we're going to be pushing 40 heroes, right, in the game, and if not more, depending on, what the timeline ends up being.
So taking a look at what he was actually saying in this interview, let's start with the first part of his statement where he says pushing 40 heroes. For those of you who might not know, the term pushing followed by a number, such as pushing 40, means coming close to that number, but not actually reaching it. So the highest number he could actually be alluding to by saying pushing 40 is actually 39, but depending on how lenient you are with the definition, you could argue that he might mean as few as 36, given that 36 is closer to 40 than it is to 30. The second part of his statement, maybe more, indicating maybe more than pushing 40 heroes, which basically just means 40 plus heroes at that point. The way he tacks it on to the end of his statement very much feels like he's just covering his bases in terms of saying, we don't know how many heroes will be ready by the time Overwatch 2 releases. So I'm just saying our current estimate is pushing 40 heroes with the sequel, but maybe it'll be more. Honestly, this is about as open-ended as it gets and doesn't give us any concrete information about how many they have planned. At best, it could indicate that the number of new heroes they were planning to add with Overwatch 2 at the time of this interview being recorded could have been 7, given that we currently have 32 heroes, and adding 7 more would bring us up to 39, but it also could mean as few as just 4 new heroes, since that would put us at 36, and as I said, 36 technically you could argue is being pushing 40. Basically, this interview just doesn't give us any more concrete information than what we already have simply from the Game Informer article I discussed at length in my previous video, as it's just a vague statement of roughly how many heroes there are going to be when Overwatch 2 releases, with just a little statement tacked on afterwards to imply the possibility of there being more than that. I think a lot of people are just getting confused by the wording he uses by saying pushing 40 as opposed to high 30s for the hero count, but it's certainly not any sort of clear indication about the actual number we're gonna end up getting. So these have been all the most common misconceptions I see being brought up when it comes to new heroes in Overwatch 2, and I'll also just mention that I'm sure we will end up getting more than just the 4 heroes I discussed in my previous video, since Overwatch 2 basically needs to launch with, well, more than 4 heroes given all the delays it's gone through. But in terms of just core concrete information we have and statements from the devs, and taking into account misconceptions based on some of those statements, we don't actually have at this point an official statement from the devs indicating more than just those 4, which I think is just an important detail to mention as well. But anyways, let me know your thoughts on all this by dropping a comment down below. Is there a particular hero you're hoping to see join the roster in Overwatch 2? I know Mauga is by far a fan favorite, but certainly there are many other characters that people are excited for as well, so I'd love to hear your thoughts on that down in the comments. And otherwise, thank you all so much for watching. Be sure to subscribe, follow me on Twitter, hit up that bell icon, and come join my Discord server to hang out and never miss any of my future Overwatch and Overwatch 2 news and content. Special thanks to my YouTube channel members who help make these videos possible, and if you'd like to join them to earn some cool rewards, then just hit that join button down below. Otherwise, this is Master Gamer signing off, and until next time, have a great day.